Hi guys, welcome to this playlist of HR round questions from the management leadership principles of Amazon. Now what we are supposed to do is that we will one by one tackle each management principle, try to look at those questions and try to address what are the key things that you're supposed to give in your answer to get higher probability of success at Amazon. Let's begin. Before we move on to all the answers, we have a playlist of all the questions that are frequently asked and they are answered by us. And if you like them, then please do subscribe to our channel, like our video, and share this to someone who might need for any other top tech company as HR round. Let's move on to the first management principle question. First management principle question revolves around the fact of customer obsession, out of which Amazon focuses extremely high on this principle. Now some of the questions that are asked are on your screen and they focus upon how you have been able to prioritize your customer. What have you done in order to meet the customer requirements beyond the expectations? Where have been you be able to apologize to a customer, and can you tell us a story where you have given extremely high quality service? Let's look at what is the whole idea of asking this question and what are the key points that you should address during your interview. First and foremost, you have to make the Amazon interviewer believe that the customer at hand is the most important parameter in this complete organizational business setup. While doing that, you also need to convey to them that how you will keep the organizational ethics also into place. Just customer satisfaction or customer requirements do not mean that you will bypass the ethics and rules and regulations of the organization. Another important aspect is while you are apologizing or you are telling them that you have not been able to meet a certain expectations, please do maintain a certain amount of dignity while you are explaining to the customer, and this also helps them understand that you treat this complete setup as a professional kind of a setup rather than a personal one. It's very important that you focus upon what is the flaw of the process which you will try to improve upon and try to improve the customer experience. And it's very important that how you have been able to hold your patience, how you have been able to give options to the customer, whether you have been somebody who's offered interim solutions to the customer in any of your previous occasions of job, internships, as well as organizational and college projects. Bring those examples. These are behavioral questions. People want to know how would you react in a certain situation, and that's where it's very important that what is your priority in terms of thought process, customers ethics, customer experience, and retaining a customer. It's very important. Try to convey the fact that you are somebody who looks to retain a customer, because a customer who returns again and again is a great benefit rather than just a one-time customer. So it's very important that this management principle is answered in the key points that I just mentioned. If you like what we are doing, then please do check out the playlist of all the management principle questions that we have asked. If you have any questions that you think on a customer obsession parameter you have been asked in an interview, please drop that in the comment section. Like this video, share it. Ownership. This is something that Amazon is looking for in all of their employees, where they are looking at the overall perspective of the organization rather than sticking to their individualistic mindsets of looking only around their jobs. Now, what you have to indicate in that management principle is that you are somebody who looks at organizational operation in a holistic manner. Let's quickly look at what are the questions that are asked in this region, and I'll try to address you what will be the best way you can answer. First one is that tell me something, a time where you had a very difficult short-term decision to make in order to have a long-term gain. Tell me a time where you had project with unclear responsibilities, and tell me a time where you had to leave a task unfinished, and tell me a time where you have to have a task which is beyond your responsibility, and tell me a time when you took upon yourself to take a challenging initiative. Now these are all behavioral and situational questions. How do you should answer those questions is to come up with a real life story in your projects as well as in your previous work experiences. First and foremost, make the interviewer believe that the situation that you were in was difficult. That's point number one. Because whenever you come out of a difficult situation, it really creates an impact. Second, whenever you're trying to build a story around unclear responsibilities or where you took a lead, try to be more specific. What I mean by specific, quantify the project details, quantify the magnitude of changes required to be done, quantify the timeline that was crunched. That is very important while you give this example from your previous work as well as internship experiences. Now, whenever you are trying to convey this, please remember the Amazon interviewer is not looking for a perfect answer. What they are looking for is that whether you have gone beyond your role, and that is what is very important, whether you succeed or not, but whether you have moved ahead in order to take up responsibilities and think beyond the ordinary, right? So this is a very key important aspect on which a lot of behavioral questions are asked. I hope my points are clear enough to give you a good example from your previous life in order to convince the customer as well as the interviewer that you are somebody who keeps ownership as the sacrosanct parameter. Let's look at the aspect, what is the expectation when we are looking at questions in the category of invent and simplify. Here it's very important to understand what is the expectation of the interviewer. They are trying to look at what are the innovative means and simplification techniques have you employed previously in your organizations or internships, and you have not limited yourself across the boundaries of your own problems. Now, all the questions that are appearing here are more or less asking you what is the situation that you simplified a process, what is the process that you attempted to simplify or change and failed, and what is the last time that you invented or gave a simpler solution to a complex problem. Now let us look at answering this question in three different parts. First and foremost, try to understand that interviewer is looking at that innovation instinct from you. But while you are innovating, a lot of people actually move on to things which are pretty high, expensive as well as complicated. Now, whenever you are giving us a suggestion of innovation, first try to look at whether that simply can be implemented or not, because implementation is a very big part of invention as well as thinking beyond the ordinary situations. Another thing that you should try to focus upon is that can you give us an example of your previous organizations in a process of taking a different route, taking a different path, even though you might have failed, but you attempted to change. So look at that effort being demonstrated, because it's very important that the interviewer feels that you're not somebody who moves along the herd. You're somebody who wants to take chances, wants to take up another opportunity or a challenge and solve it, right? Last and final aspect is that come up with a story where you have been able to give a really remarkable simple solution to a problem which was being attempted to be solved, very difficult with high cost, and you are able to bring around people to make them understand your simplified solution and also give them implementation options. So these are some things that you can do in order to target the invent and simplify vertical of the Amazon. This is a quality that Amazon is looking at in their leaders, where they have been able to take a bold decision with their own instincts as well as looking at the current scenario. So what are the behavioral questions asked in this section of the leadership principle are: what has been the time that you have completed tasks with incomplete information? What situation were you wrong? It's a very important aspect that you need to highlight. Telling about a situation where you had to incorporate a lot of diverse point of views, and another aspect that what was the time that you encountered and challenged your beliefs. Now let's look at how you should answer this question. First and foremost, you need to understand the expectation of the interviewer. Interviewer is looking to understand whether you first acknowledge mistakes and the things that you do wrong. So whatever scenario you want to portray to the question that you went wrong, please do acknowledge the fact that you realize your mistake and you started to work towards improvement. It's very important to show that quality. Another important aspect while answering this question is that you're not somebody who's single-headed. What I mean single-headed is that you have an economic perspective, technical perspective, as well as the holistic impact that you will have at the end of this problem. So that is very important to highlight, that you're somebody who's a techno-commercial guy, not only looking at technical aspects, but also the commercial impact and the reputation that will come to hand. One important aspect finally I want you to be highlighting is that whatever example that you want to give from your previous situations in college as well as internships, try to make yourself open to ideas. Just inform during that example that we were able to collect diverse ideas because we were open to different point of views. This quality is appreciated by Amazon interviewers. Please be very careful what you want to convey, because you don't know what they are thinking of each and every answer. That's why it's very important to pinpoint these key highlights in your answers, and you will definitely succeed. Talking about being curious. The most important questions that are asked for this management principle revolve around the fact that how far have you been able to succeed in problem solving using the questions method. What I mean by that is that have you been able to probe deeper by asking questions and solve those problems. Some of the questions that are mentioned are on the screen, which are most frequently asked in these interviews. I'll come to the most important part now, where how you can actually answer these questions the most ideal way. Most important thing to realize is that what the interviewer is expecting out of this Amazon leadership principle. First thing is whether the person has the curiosity to probe further. Next, whether he has the guts or the courage to ask questions where others have actually stopped thinking. And that's where you have to give them a real life example from your internship as well as in your office work, where you have taken up a real life problem which appeared to be very difficult and beyond the knowledge scheme of yours at that point of time, and how you have asked and probed details further. Also try to mention some scientific methodology that you have adopted while being curious. 5 why technique is one important method that you can indicate to the interviewer that you adapted while you were solving this problem. It's very essential that the person has the specifics of the problem in front of them, like what was the problem exactly and what was the challenge that was being targeted, and what were the means of questioning as well as probing further that were deployed. And finally, the results are the most important part here, where you have to be very specific and quantify the success of the results which were achieved by curiosity and probing and taking the questions further and further. Is hire and develop the best. A lot of things are revolving around the fact that the leaders are making the right decision of employing the people in the right places. You might think that this is something which may only be a topic of the HR related individuals, but I would like to give you a little more information that people are actually evaluating their potential candidates, whether they can manage a group, whether they can make the right decision of actually evaluating people and having them in their team. Is somebody capable of being a mentor to someone else? And can you tell us that where you made a decision of hiring the best individual possible in your team? These are the questions that revolve and give us individual's ability to judge a person's capabilities in the industry as well as the IT sector itself. So let's try to look what are the key things that you should try to put forth while you are answering this question regarding the best hire. First important thing I would like to highlight is that try to indicate that when we are selecting the individual for a role, first thing that you should look is whether he is fit for the role or not, because a lot of times we try to put square pegs in round holes because we just like a person or we have just worked with them for some time, but we have to evaluate the right skills for the person, because that kind of a decision can affect the overall performance of the project. Next important parameter is that to evaluate the hire after a small period has gone by. A lot of people take a decision and stick by it because of their individual mindset, but it's important that you evaluate this hire at small intervals to make the overall project succeed. The third thing is talk about where you have been able to manage a group of people and resolve a conflict, because it's very important for Amazon or any other big tech company to understand that are you a people's person, are you somebody who can resolve a conflict, be among groups, as well as try to mentor people and take them the right decision and get the best out for the organization. If you're insisting on highest standards, please try to understand what is the idea behind the questions as well as the concept behind this leadership principle. It's because Amazon focuses on extremely high standards of quality and services and processes while it's dealing with its customers, vendors, as well as internally. So some of the questions that are asked in this regard are talking about a hypothetical scenario, or maybe a scenario in your life previously where maybe a team member did not meet expectations, maybe you could not meet your own expectations. How have you been able to raise the bar and go beyond expectations? Have you been able to motivate people in your team and reach a goal? Or have you been able to actually move up the bar, move up the notch? Let's try to see what are the key things that you're supposed to identify in this kind of questions and how you should answer it. First and foremost, try to understand that when you are answering these questions, please to try to give them a real life example from your internship, from your college, as well as projects. But how would you like to shape it is something very important. First point I want to tell you is that try to keep it realistic, because a lot of people try to, in order to appear smart, try to make this question or this situation actually manipulate the complete idea of raising the bar. Try to tell them an honest story from your projects as an internship, which is talking about change in the goalpost. What I mean by change in goalpost is that whenever you've seen that the targets are getting much easier, you have set them up, you have moved ahead. It's very important that you indicate what are the tools that you have used to raise the bar and as well as motivate your team. Try to tell as examples of making people realize how important their work is while you are motivating them for a goal. It's very important that you try to show that each and every member is important. Also try to actually indicate to the interviewer about how you have been able to overcome the gap of expectations that you keep for yourself. A lot of people have too high expectations, or some of them have too low. The idea behind this question is to try to indicate to them that you realize your challenges and you can work upon it. This Amazon leadership principle, this is one of the principles that's very critical to Amazon, considering the fact that Amazon has been a company which hasn't been keeping its goals very limited or not something which a normal person can think of. And that's where it comes up with the philosophy that thinking small is self-fulfilling prophecy, which really means that a lot of people are very happy thinking in a very small environment and a small target and a goal, because it helps them actually succeed and remain successful and not feel bad or not feel challenged. Thereby, it's very important that leaders communicate the bold directions that inspire results and think differently and beyond the scheme of things to actually serve the customers. So let's try to see which are the questions that are asked in this regard, and I'll try to give you an overview how you could attempt the same. Amazon leadership principles focuses upon, tell me a situation where you went beyond the scope of the project and delivered. What would be your proudest professional achievement? When you were disappointed of not thinking big? And tell me a time when your vision resulted in a big impact to the project. And finally, tell me a time that you took a bold and a difficult decision. Now, how you need to answer this is, as I have previously informed in some of the previous videos, that real life examples create an impact from your projects as well as internship. But in this case, what you need to assess as well as give them a point of view is about when I talk about the proudest achievement or something which has been difficult to achieve, you need to give them the context. Context is very important when you are trying to give them an indicator where you have been able to achieve. For example, you got through an hackathon. Example, you got through a big competitive coding scope. It's important that you explain them how difficult was that in terms of how many people participated, what were your results, and how was it difficult to prepare for it, and how you were not able to actually estimate that goal initially. It's very important for you to tell them that you're not someone who thinks limited, thinks beyond the scope, and also try to give them situations where you have gone beyond the satisfaction requirements of the customer and given them something that they will remember and come back to you. Also try to talk about a situation which was a little bit of a failure. It is okay to talk about a failure in the interview, but you should be able to identify whether you had learnings out of it. And that's where I'm very important, the portion where you could say that I could have done better, I could have targeted a bigger goal. That kind of a scenario from your internships or your projects or your work experience can be a good way to show that how wide and deep is your vision, and that helps organizations. So this would be my point of view, that how you could answer this question and what are the expectations of this interviewer when they are talking about questions which revolve around the Amazon leadership principle of think big. If bias for action, this is a question that is generally asked talking about your decision making skills. Here it talks about speed matters in business and many decisions and actions are irreversible, and definitely they need the ability to take a risk. Some of the questions asked in this category are talking about when was the last time you took a calculated risk? Could you tell me a time where you could not get information right on time and how did you respond? Describe a time that you saw a problem and took an initiative to correct it, waiting or avoiding that waiting period for somebody else to tell you that. There could be another question talking about your decision making on lack of information. And finally, tell me a time where you made a decision quickly enough or the situation would have been different. Now, as we go along all of these questions, we have been talking about focusing on the fact that you have to communicate with examples. Any experience or any quality cannot be justified or convinced with the interviewer without a valid example. This example could range from any of your previous experiences, internships, projects, as well as talking about your work experiences. So what is the focus of this question? They really need to understand that are you someone who looks beyond the ordinary current situations? Are you anticipating the challenges that are coming your way? Also, how good has been your decision making skills and how do you assess your risks? Thereby, it's very important that you talk about your risk taking abilities with a certain amount of calculation or adjustment of risk that you are taking. It's important for them to know that you evaluated all worst case scenarios in that project before you took that decision. Also, are you anticipating situations, what will go wrong, how you can mend that, what is your plan B, and whether you are taking initiatives. You could give them an example related to your project wherein everybody else was not agreeing to a particular kind of a methodology to solve this problem. But you took that methodology up, proved to everyone that you understood the situation far beyond the ordinary current situation, and you gave them that output, convinced people about it, and your time and energy that you spent in working on it was a calculated risk to complete this project. And thereby you should not overboast of any high risks that you have taken, because an interviewer will be able to evaluate you considering the fact he knows what kind of risk a particular experienced person can take. Thereby, talk and give about realistic examples. Do not fake your experiences. People can really come to know without the lack of detail available. They will know. That's why it's very important. Take up an example from your real life. It may be a small one, but gives them a real aspect of you about your risk taking ability as well as clarity of decisions. It's very important that you communicate that with a real life example, and thereby you will be able to convince the interviewer. If you coming on to the next leadership principles thing, which is talking about frugality. When we talk about frugality, is achievement in less. The amount of constraints that you had led to you working out a better and a new innovative solution, as well as finding the solution within this given set of constraints. It's very easy to ask for more headcount, very easy to ask a new budget and increase the fixed costs. But have you been able to perform within a set of constraints? Although Amazon may sound like a very big company, but they would be very much focused upon keeping their extra costs lower. And thereby it's very important for you to be prepared to answer questions like, tell me a time where you had to work within a limited set of resources, where you had to rely on somebody to finish your task. Where could be a situation where people turn down a lot of resources to complete your assignment. Tell me a town that you beat the competition with latest and less resources. And tell me a town you had to be frugal. It's very important that you come up with a real life example wherein you are giving them details of the frugality of the situation. The lack of resources, the lack of people, the lack of know-how can also be a big frugal constraints while completing projects. It's very important that you convey to them you're not somebody who always wants the adequate resources available to achieve a result. It's very important to indicate to them how you innovated, how you created a jugaad out of the situation to come up with a solution without the required resources. Very important. Try to convey them with details, because these details make it more convincing, make it more real. So my suggestions would be, come up with examples which give you real life examples of situations as well as projects in which you have worked with limited resources, as well as you have been dependent on a lot of people to get your stuff done. That example will combine your efforts to get that thing in the mind of the interviewer that you're someone who can work with less resources too. And that is one important aspect that you need to communicate in this Amazon leadership principle. Earn trust. Now this is one of the leadership principles that is very important to Amazon, considering the fact that they have been honest as well as being very candid in giving feedback, as well as taking feedback from their employees as well as leaders. It's very important that whenever you are in an environment which is trying to excel and serve its customers at the best situation, earning the trust of your team members as well as customers is very important. Some of the questions asked in this regard is that, tell me a time where you had to tell someone a harsh truth. How did you do it? Would you be able to tell or talk to a closest friend about somebody who's stealing? And what is the quality which you value the least about yourself? It's a very important question. You need to be very careful while answering it. What do you do to gain the trust of your teammates? Tell me a time about you had to speak up in a difficult environment. And these are the questions that would actually be focusing on your character, on which how you gel with people, how you get their trust. One of the examples I can give you is that when you talk about earning trust of teammates is being honest about the feedback and also being constructive. It's very important that when you gain trust by giving an honest feedback but in a constructive manner, that would help the other person. Also helping people whenever they are in need, offering your services to people when they are actually in a difficult crux scenario because of a new requirement that has come to the project. Another way that you could get trust is get your activities and tasks reviewed by others. So whenever you put someone in a judging position, you always give them trust and you get trust back. And it's very important that you tell them these qualities. Another way that you could answer this question is because when you had to tell somebody a harsh truth, you would create a context, you would create an environment where the other person is able to hear you. For example, if you want to tell somebody that who has not been performing really well, you could arrange a short meeting which is in a little informal environment try to talk to them about what are the difficulties that they are facing right now. They would come up with their point of view, and you also let them know that the performance has been dropping, and it's very important that I give you the feedback at the right time, because later on when you are being evaluated or appraisals happen, it might land yourself into trouble. And that's where I am taking this opportunity to tell you what is the harsh reality today, and what we can do about it could also be the follow-up question. Because telling somebody the truth or something which is not working is good, but then you have to also look at a solution. If you can help them find a solution, or if you can provide some resources or try to understand their difficulties, it would be a great way to help them overcome it. And thereby you are able to bring a lot of trust in that relationship. So it's very important you answer these questions in a manner of empathy, how you think about others, and then you will be able to gain trust and be popular as well as successful within your team. And gaining the trust of the customers is paramount, and that's where you need to deliver things beyond expectations. The deep dive section is mainly revolving around the fact that Amazon wants its employees to go into the detail, not only work on surfaces. It's very important that leaders look beyond what is there on the symptoms, whether they are going into the root cause of the problem and trying to evaluate the real problem. It's very important that what are the learnings that you're taking through your processes, and what are the questions. Let's quickly get into it. Tell me something about a situation where you recently learned about your role. Give me 2 examples when you did more than what was required in your job experience, and tell me about the most complex situation you've worked. Tell me about a time when understanding the details of the situation helped you arrive at the solution. Very important that whenever you are trying to give answers of deep dive, try to emphasize on the fact that symptoms and the root cause of the problems are generally different, and most of the times people treat the symptoms. And when your vision revolves around the fact that you want to really know why it happened rather than directly coming to the solution, you are more focused upon why has this problem occurred in the first place. We had a development team, we had a testing team. Why did this problem pass on to the customer? Why did the customer come to this problem? And it's very important for you to indicate that you will look into the details of it and then come up with a solution for this customer. Another aspect of deep dive is look at horizontal deployment of the solution, because a lot of time people go into details, solve a problem, but do not horizontally deploy to all other customers. It's very important you focus on that. That gives the organization a little bit of more leeway to remain stable as well as avoid complications in future customers as well as future situations. Very important, whenever you're trying to give them an example, give them details, give them numbers, give them types of project names, because such kind of examples where you have been facing a complicated situation, if you do not give specific details, it won't be believable for the person that you're someone who believes in deep diving to reach the root cause and coming up with solutions. Have a backbone, disagree and commit. Now this is one important quality that Amazon is looking for in its employees, because a lot of times people do not stand for what they really believe. They do not have the right conviction strong to really back their point of views. It's very important that whenever you're looking for a disagreement or commitment to an idea, it may be uncomfortable but needs to be respectful. So whenever you are in such an environment, they are looking for people who would disagree or challenge a decision for the well-being of the organization. It's very important that you keep your ego away while you're disagreeing, you're putting your stuff in front. Your idea is always for the benefit of the organization. Let's quickly look at what are the questions asked and what are the things you should keep in mind while you try to answer it. First and foremost, tell me a situation where you had to step up and disagree with a team member. If your direct manager was instructed to do something you disagreed, how would you handle it? Tell me a time when you did not accept the status quo and changed it. Tell me an unpopular decision of yours and what do you think that you believe nobody else believes in. Such questions revolve around the fact how you handle this uncomfortable situation of a disagreement and a difference of hierarchy. Let's come to a question where we could put forth an idea with a difference of opinion of a team member. The best ideas would be to put the pros and cons of your proposal on the table. Also put yourself in the position of others, trying to understand how they are feeling about it, and also giving the perspective how it is a good idea for the organization. We have to come to a conclusion with a disagreement that what is good for the organization, good for this project, and good for our customers, rather than what is good for us. It's not about the idea of your idea or my idea, it's about the idea that is better for the organization. And that's what is the point of view that you need to push in while you disagree. Another important aspect of disagreement and commitment would be a respectful disagreement or respectful difference of opinion. It's very important to disagree, but you should maintain a certain amount of respect while you are disagreeing with people, because that creates a psychological barrier and people won't understand you if you aren't respectful about others' ideas. And that's where comes the fact: respect others' ideas, pick the best out of their ideas, also present your own. And that's how you will be able to put that thought in the mind of the Amazon interviewer that you're someone who's empathetic, who's respectful, and still has a backbone to keep his idea for the company. Companies, organizational requirements need to be paramount, and that needs to be highlighted during this interview. One out of the 1 to 14 list that we have prepared, talking about delivering results. Very important. Amazon talks about all values and customer satisfaction, but they are looking at delivering the right quality in the timely manner without the hindrances and the bottlenecks that come their way. It's very important that you come up with good success as well as successful startups, informations, as well as deliverables that you did during your project, internships, and work experiences. Let's quickly get on to the questions that are asked during this period. Give me an example that you were 75% of their project and you had to pivot the strategy and how you were able to do it as a success story. Give me an example of how you handled variety of experiments and assignments that came your way. What is the most difficult situation you have faced? And tell me a time you had too much things on the plate. How did you handle it? Coming to how you could answer these questions is come up with a real life example from your internships as well as projects. How would you define it? Is by giving them a situation which was indicating that so many constraints were existing, along with the difficulties, the timelines, the quality, the information, the lack of knowledge that was surrounding you. How did you diversify, or how did you demarcate each area? How did you set your priorities? How did you ask for help? How did you come to a point where you felt the need to tell your manager, tell your colleagues about the difficulties you were facing? Go into that detail to indicate someone that you're not someone who is bogged down by so many things that come to your plate. You actually think about and analyze how, and you will be able to prioritize this. Very important. You have to appear like a go-getter. You have to appear like someone who delivers results, because end of the day the interviewer wants to know that are you someone who will get the job done? Are you someone who will take the initiative to look at the current bottlenecks and try to attack them and reach a conclusion? This is what is needed out of those questions. So focus on those questions, that how you are able to achieve the difficult project or the internship that you were wanting for a long time. What were the things that you did? Did you approach a lot of people? Did you change your strategy? Those kind of stuff you need to address while answering these questions. Striving to be the Earth's best employer. This is the principle that has been recently added at the Amazon Leadership Principles Complete Accumulation, which talks about how leaders as well as individuals can allow or help others create a better environment at work. This principle is mainly revolving around the fact that how leaders are taking part in helping employees succeed, and not only when they are in the realm of Amazon but also beyond. Let's quickly look at some of the questions that are asked at the Amazon leadership interview for this kind of principle. First is that tell me a time about when you capitalize an opportunity to help a co-worker and allow an employee to grow. How did you approach the situation? What was the result? The other question that could be asked is tell me something a time when you worked or created a safer, productive environment for people without being pushed for. And the next one being tell me an example of incorporating fun into your workday. Your Answers should revolve around the fact about a real life example from your work which has helped you succeed in making your processes much better. An example where you have taken an initiative to change the environment of your workplace, have considered the success of other employees. This is something that is very critical while you give that example. Another important thing in this example you should note is that how you are making the environment able to speak up, being able to open up and convey their messages within the team. So give that example how you have created that team within the workplace that you were working previously. Talk about an initiation of that is giving the excitement or buzz at your workplace. This will help the Amazon interviewers understand that you are someone who doesn't want to stay in the mundane environment but wants to take the initiative to succeed. That would be my recommendations for you for this leadership principle. To success and scale, bring broad responsibility. Now here you have to look at the aspects wherein humility as well as your awareness to the actions that are creating impact all around the world are very important to be evaluated. This leadership principle clearly focuses upon the responsibilities to make the world a better place as well as for the current as well as future generations. And we have to take our success very strongly and not shy away from responsibility. Coming on to the most frequently asked questions in this leadership principle is that tell me a time when you contributed to work something bigger than yourself and what was the impact. Tell me a time where you left something better that you found was big or small. Have you been ever faced with a moral dilemma in workplace? How did you respond? These questions are mainly revolving around the ethical mindset that you will bring to Amazon. Most importantly is to understand your decision making or the examples of the past that you're going to quote in this kind of a question need to be ethically right. When I talk about ethically right, it has to make the right impact in the world as well as an impact in the long term. Please be very careful while presenting your stories as well as success examples during this leadership principle, because it has to look as not only profitable for Amazon but also being ethical to world in general, because Amazon has included this leadership principle mainly to have the impact of the power which it can impact so many lives. So be very careful that whatever example that you present needs to be honest, needs to be ethical, and has to be well thought and structured in a manner that gives an idea of scale, success, but with broader responsibility of the society. If you got a little bit of idea about this new leadership principle, then definitely like this video, share it with your friends. Do not forget to check the description. You will find some resources as well as some playlists for Amazon interviews that will help you succeed at Amazon jobs. Thank you so much and bye bye.